Well, hey, Merry Christmas. Happy
Merry
holidays.
Christmas, Happy Hanukkah.
All the things, all the things. How do
All
we go live here? All right, I
of
think I got it.
We're
You might
good.
have it as well. Well, hey, everybody. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Happy holidays. All the things that you might be celebrating. And it seemed appropriate. I had a whole bunch of these that were like absolutely chaotic that Alice and I would come on and do a stream on surviving the holidays as a couple, like actually staying together as a couple during the holidays. So, I mean, we'll get into that in a bit. Alice, any thoughts on that?
Well, no, I mean, I'm just excited to dive in because it's a topic I know for sure that if we had had this 25 years ago, would have made a big difference in how we navigated things. And so we've learned through the fire in a lot of circumstances, and we'll share some stories of that. Ended up better on the other side, and excited to share some things we've picked up along these 25 years.
Some lessons from mentors along the way for sure. Well, for those of you that don't know us, Seth and Alice Daly, whichever random stream you're following right now, here are some of the business ventures that we find ourselves involved in. When we saw some folks at a party yesterday, and they're like, "So what all do you guys do?" We're like, "Well, it's a bunch of things right now." And so we've got a real estate team and some coaching inside and outside of real estate. And Alice, of course, award-winning author. Alice, why don't you tell them what Table Builders is? They may not know.
Yeah, so Table Builders is an event, a live event that I do here at our home. It's a way that I connect women with one another, but has turned into something that now I help other women create right where they are. So creating communities of women to be able to connect with one another.
Yeah, and then of course Realign Empowering Couples, which is really where we're focused on helping couples work together. They're partners in business and in life, and that's a tricky spot to navigate. We've been navigating that for 20 plus years. We love engaging those conversations. So if you find yourself in that space, we would love to chat more with you on that. And of course, here is the gathering of our women on a regular basis. So this is a couple days ago. This is us surviving the holidays. I love this picture because everybody's smiling, which is not always the way that it works. But everybody will pose for a photo here and there. So Alice, when you think about the difference between the Facebook or Instagram perfect pictures from Christmas and sort of the way it all actually works out, like what comes to mind for you?
My goodness, I think social media has really, in so many ways, distorted the holidays and the ways things should be. And I think has caused a lot of discontent for people, even more so. Not that we needed more help, but now it's like, oh, I didn't buy the matching pajamas. Oh, my elf didn't do these cool little tricks every day of the month of December. Oh, my kid didn't get this, or we didn't go on this vacation. Like, you see all of the things that are missing, all of the things you did not do. And when we see all of the things that we didn't do, that just sucks the life out of anything that we do have. It's so easy to focus in on what we don't have and what we didn't create and how we are less than and how we didn't, we're just not enough and we didn't measure up to the Joneses. It really has accelerated that in a very dangerous way, I think.
Yeah. And then it's like, did we travel enough? Did we not invite the right people? Did we invite too many people? We navigated that this year where for the first time, one of our daughters is like, well, can I bring somebody with us can we celebrate the holidays together? And we're like, I don't know. I don't know if we want that. We think it'll ruin family time, right? So we were working through those dynamics ourselves this year. And I feel like over the years, it's just this idea of we have traveled a ton during the holidays and it has created utter exhaustion. And then on the other side of it, we're like, we feel like we need a holiday from the holiday, and we didn't know how to navigate that. We ended up feeling totally stressed out, and we look back at some missing conversations that happened in the midst of that.
Or missing conversations that didn't happen.
Yeah. Sorry about that. And then when I think about resentment, especially if you're watching this and you are a couple that works together, it's like if you're anywhere in the self-employed entrepreneurial space, it's like you wish you could just hit pause, and you would love to think that that's the case. I mean, I'm thinking of a lead, one of these holidays where it's like somebody wanted to see a property on Christmas Eve, and it's like, and wouldn't take no for an answer, right? Wouldn't, like, there was no pausing that. And it's like, what kind of tension does that create when you're trying to set aside time for the people that matter most? You've got these 24/7 entrepreneurial careers that are just constantly pushing the edge and the envelope of what that is. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, when you work together and when you're in business together and when you're self-employed, there's always this thought of, well, we need to be doing more. We need to be doing more. I also, like, do I need that lead to pay for Christmas? Like,
yeah,
it's easy for other people to say, oh, just take some time off, and to feel this tension and this rub of like, but you don't understand.
Yeah.
If you're not in it, like, you just don't understand what it's like to be self-employed in the holiday season. It's not the same as like, I remember the days of like being in school, just K through 12 and then college, of like the semester breaks of just feeling like I'm just going to make it through that last final. And then like, I can put all of this stuff away and never have to look at it again. And I get this like fresh start. And unless we create that ourselves, being self-employed, that doesn't exist. It's like just this perpetual rolling, like always, always more, something else we could be doing. And there are lots of conversations that aren't had around that to make sure that we can then have the type of family time that we want to have. And how do we navigate that as couple and as business partners at the same time?
Yeah, well, and it's even like there's no two people that will navigate that exactly the same. So then if you're married to your business partner and there's any sort of conversations that you actually would, to move the ball forward, you actually would need to talk to like your business partner for a moment. Now we get all this tension of, what do you mean you're bringing that conversation? I thought we were in family time. Don't you care about our family? Right? I'm not saying those words have ever been said, but I feel like I got the I once, right, about that. But that's hard, right? Because you're trying to navigate this the best that you can. But certainly if you work together and you're navigating, okay, are we 100% off? Are we 90% off? What constitutes a business emergency? What doesn't? It's not like we're starting these new initiatives, but in almost like this reactive mode. And it's crazy how not only do we as a couple, but then our kids could start to resent the business that actually creates all this opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. And how do you navigate that? Is there anything else when you think about, I mean, I know we talk about like consumerism and, gifts, like the stress of all of the shopping.
Well, yeah, let's talk about the roles that come into play when it comes to the holidays. I'll stereotype for a moment, but I think in most households, it tends to be, it's not always, but it tends to be, I think, the moms, the wives that take on a lot of the, what's every kid getting, and buying it, wrapping it, making sure, all the kids are kind of treated somewhat equally if possible. Making sure all that stuff makes it under the tree. And then, we've all got to eat for several days. Like, everybody's home 24/7. So is the fridge stocked with what we need, and who's making Christmas dinner? And like all of these extra now roles that come into play on top of an already full schedule. And then the gifts of, creating the magical moments. Everybody wants to create all these magical moments. And it's like, oh my gosh, like it's exhausting to make so much magic happen.
And then I not so much this year, but I know in years past, you and I have sort of experienced Christmas together, and we were like, hey, do we like the values that are sort of creeping into our family here right now? Like, I don't know. Did the kids, did you get a lot of gratitude there? Did you feel more entitlement? They gave you the Christmas list ahead of time. Was that like a shopping list and it was just expected? And are we just literally the people that push add to cart on Amazon now? Or do we like what's showing up inside of our family and that experience?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So the real issue is this. I mean, when the holidays are missing the happy, what do you do? And here's are some lessons that we wish that we had learned earlier over the years, right? I mean, I'm forgetting which mentor we got this from, right? But conflict arises because of unmet expectations, and conflict for us during the holidays, both just as a couple. Conflict shows up as, one day you wake up and you're just a little less aligned in how to handle it, or you navigate the holidays and you get back on the other side of it in early January and you're like, we're not feeling as close. Like, what happened over the past week or two? And for us, it often has been just these unmet expectations, which we realize were often just unexpressed expectations. And
I'd encourage you to just take a second right now. Just close your eyes and think about the last conflict that you had. It could be with anybody. It could be your spouse. It could be kids. It could be somebody at work. Like, what's the last conflict you remember having? So just really just let that settle in. What was the conflict? What was the actual conflict? Now, if you think about who was involved in the conflict, what were the expectations that you have that were unmet in that conflict? You can probably come up with that pretty quickly. What were the expectations that were unmet for the other party? If you start to look at conflict, any type of conflict that arises, as unmet expectations, you will start to view conflict very differently. And it will also just shine this light on, holy cow, if that's the basis of conflict, unmet expectations, there's so much that we can do on the front end to minimize conflict.
And it really goes then to this next idea of the right conversations make so much of a difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
The right conversations, which can be, they're predictable, right? The right conversations we found over the years, it's like, all right, we need to have that conversation again. It's very predictable in what it creates. So we want to dig into what some of those conversations have been over the years for us, and we'll walk through it. It is probably this time of year that we always go back and think about, what do we value most right now? This especially hits me, I think, when I just imagine the consumerism of Christmas, and I'm like, well, that's not where I saw this going. So when we start to think through, all right, as a family, what do we value the most? And this invariably becomes a personal question first, and then it becomes a question that we have as a couple, and we've noticed it in years that we didn't have this conversation, that we didn't figure out what we valued. And one of us absolutely was valuing making the kids feel loved with gifts. And the other one was valuing quality time or something like that. And we just went in almost totally different directions during the holidays. Or one of us is like, how many people can we see? How much can we show extended family? How much they matter to us? Let's travel, like the Amazing Race. And the other is like, let's just settle. Let's have this be the season of rest. Right?
Or more time or more money. Do we want to double the income, or do we want to double the time that we're spending together? I know in years where there's been financial stress, it's been work every second because we don't know what it's going to be like. Do we need to make this time about harvesting when the harvest is good, even if it's at the expense of some of this time? Because as entrepreneurs, well, maybe we'll take the kids on a trip in a couple months instead, and that'll be more of our family time. Yeah. But again, this is all about internally what's going on for each of us. Like, if I'm feeling stressed financially and you're like, no, we're in a good place, like we can take this time off, but yet it's unexpressed, there's going to automatically be conflict.
Yeah. One of the questions almost relates to values is this question we'd always ask ourselves: is this a vacation or a family trip? So if you find yourself traveling during the holidays, and you find yourself not necessarily being aligned on what's the intention behind this, sometimes we would just have to focus and say, is this a vacation or is this a family trip? I mean, Alice, how do you describe the difference on that?
I'm going to propose that if you're going to see extended family, if you are meeting other people on the other end of this thing, one, it's definitely not a vacation. Like there is an intention of connection with other people in a way that that is work. Like
Yeah.
true connection with others that you don't see after a long period of time. Like that's work. So that's not a vacation.
Doesn't make it bad.
It doesn't make it bad. It's necessary. And to think that that is at your vacation time would be an absolute misnomer. So if you think that you're going to come back rested from that, we already know that you're not. So let's call the spade a spade. Now, if you're like us, we've got 4 kids. It's just very busy. If we go travel and do anything, even with the 6 of us, do you think all 6 of us want the same thing at the same times? Of course not. Like, everybody's got their opinions on how things should go. And it's like, you could go to the happiest place on earth, Disney, right? Have you seen kids cry at Disney? Yes. And have you seen the parents that are like, and you're going to have a good time because this ticket was $150 just for today? Those are stressful moments. That's not a vacation. Like I remember when we came back from Disney World, one of our first trips with the kids, and I was exhausted. And Seth was like, but we just came back from vacation and we're so tired. It wasn't a vacation. It was a family trip. There was nothing restful. There was nothing restorative. It was to create, like the goal was to create the family memories of being at Disney. And when you're doing that, that is like work, and in a different way, not the same as work, but it is effort. It is not restorative. And so just placing the actual label on what it is. And so we started to just be able to say, oh, this is a family trip, not a vacation. And now we had two different sections in our calendar of like, here's the vacation, here's the family trip. Doesn't mean they all have to be equal in time, because we've actually found that like vacations for us like could actually be pretty short and restorative, but there's no agenda with that. And a lot of times the vacation is just you and me, and we go off and we go do something, and that's restful.
And it could be inside of a family trip a little bit, right? I mean, there's definitely times we've done a family trip and we're like, we need to get away on a date night in the middle of the family trip. Now, I don't know if calling a date night and a vacation are quite the same thing, but it's amazing when you talk about unmet expectations, right? If you just look back on the trip that you had and one of you is more frustrated than the other, one of you's like, this went great, and the other's like, this is not what I wanted. Ask yourself, were you aligned at the very beginning of what type of trip is this going to be? Is this going to be a vacation, or is it going to be a family trip? It's certainly a question worth asking.
Yeah.
Here's a tool that we use in almost every area. And if you've watched us, share before, you've probably seen this, right? It's a very classic concept called the Wheel of Life. And we use it in a few different ways. We'll apply it right now to the idea of the holidays, right? So like, we think about any goal that we have, and maybe that's like having an amazing holiday season in 2024, right? And then we start to think through what are the success factors that are most important to us, right? So here might be an example. Maybe the goals that you would have would be similar to ours, and so we've got a bunch of them here, right? Relaxation and rest. I mean, there's a factor. Memories with our core family, the 6 of us and our 4 daughters, connecting with our extended family, which, and by the way, you'll find that sometimes these things are naturally at odds, right? You're going to be choosing what matters most to you in different seasons, right? Gift giving, certainly a part of Christmas as a holiday, experiencing magical moments, self-care time, giving back, deepening our faith traditions, right? So these could all be, you could make your own list. These just happen to be some of the ones for us. And then we don't always, get out the crayons, but if we did, it would almost start to look like this, right? We just start to be like, well, how are we doing? Like, what are we missing? What do we want a little bit more of? What do we see? When you start to just literally take a wheel and start to rate yourself in these different areas that matter to you, and all of a sudden it just pops out. I did not color code this image here, but kind of that darker blue one, right? Connected with extended family. We didn't do that this Christmas. There's absolutely been holidays that we have, and that wasn't our priority this time, right? In fact, it hasn't been for a couple of years now since we've had kids out of the house and really just them coming home. feels like a reconnection that we didn't want to blur with a whole bunch of other stuff. I feel like it would just been lost.
Yeah. Seth, can they get this tool on our website still?
Yeah. Yes, I think so.
Couples.com/wheel. And you can actually play with this tool. And that would be like kind of the second step. The first step is just come up with these categories for you. What are the things that make because every family is unique, every couple is unique. What are the big rocks that are a part of making the holiday really special for you? I think for most people, rest would be one of them. But then I think the rest of them, they're going to vary. And so if the only conversation you had was around what does rest mean to you over the holiday, and starting to get some understanding as to what that means, and realizing that we all have our own internal representations of each one of these categories. Whatever category you come up with, I guarantee you, like my definition of it, Seth's definition of it, your definition of it, your spouse's definition, they're all going to be like vastly different. So coming to an agreement around like, or just an understanding of like, oh, like rest for you means, sitting around with a book and in your pajamas all day. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Because Seth, what's your definition of rest?
I honestly just put that in there for you, hon. I know you just mentioned that. Of course, that's the one that's a gimme, but I literally, I just needed something in green at the end, so I threw in rest for.
You're gonna be like, hey, will you be with me? Like that would be rest.
That's true. I was gonna say, as soon as we finish this, I'm gonna go on a trail hike, and that will be restful for me, right? It'll be out in nature. It'll be fresh air. Like that would be my definition of rest. Going down a ski hill at high speeds would feel.
This is your exercise, and that would be more of work. That would not be rest for me. Yeah. So again, like this is just like, what are the important conversations to have with one another? And it starts right here with these.
Here's maybe the way to utilize this as a couple, right? Because you could do this individually. We would find that if we would just sit down and brainstorm for a bit of like, hey, for this Christmas to be really great for you, what are some of the key ingredients that would need to be present for this to be a win, right? We did that with our family a couple of days ago. And frankly, we'll do sort of a mid-holiday check-in. All right, guys, how's it going? Are there any ingredients that we want to add in for the second half of this time that we get together? We've got, Carissa came into town, and Laura's in and out of the country, so that's perfect. So everybody's here right now, and we'll get a chance to kind of check in, like what ingredients would make the difference. And you get to co-create that, right? We're not battling for it. We're really trying to listen to each other. I love, Alice, what you said about the internal representation, right? IR, they call it in NLP. And it's like everybody has a different meaning to what that is. Gift giving. We're going to talk in a little bit here about the 5 love languages, because I think that's actually like a great tool to get aligned and on the same page around holidays of like, how do you actually demonstrate and show love? Mine is absolutely through quality time. I'm terrible at giving gifts. And if we didn't kind of figure that out a little bit, there'd be a lot of conflict.
Oh, guys, when you hear what Seth got me for Christmas, you're going to realize how.
Oh, it's really so nice. I wonder if you'll actually tell that story. All right. I'm just reminded, like going back, the times that we have had the most tension for us as a couple, we look back and we see moments of silence when there could have been conversations. And I think we over the years, we just learned to get to the conversations faster. And conversations often start by just a question. And this has been one that has been meaningful, right? Like when we're going through life, and maybe it's around the holidays, it's like, are we committed to couple first? And that is just this language pattern that Alice and I have on that this relationship is sort of the core from which everything else makes sense, right? Our family is most stable when we are most stable. Our business is most stable when we are centered and stable. And what does it look like to go through the holidays as a couple first and foremost?
If you have kids still at home, this is especially important, because I think the world tells us, that the kids are the center of everything. And the reality is they're only in our homes for a short period of time. And what we're modeling for them is so important. This is what they're going to take and like form their families on. And when they see mom and dad doing well, all is right with the world. And so for Seth and I to say like, hey, couple first, we're the first team. We're not going to let any of these rugrats, however old they get in between us, because do kids know how to play a parent against each other? Like they know how to do that. And as long as we're committed to being first team, we can navigate all that other stuff. And kids are going to have their emotions. They're going to have their ups and downs, but just because they go get on a roller coaster doesn't mean you need to get on it with them.
Yeah. And I think one secret to putting the couple first, and you can almost think about that like, I mean, there's Seth, there's Alice, and then there's this like third amorphous entity that is almost between us that we reference as, how is our couple doing, right? How did our couple navigate the holidays? Did we stay aligned as couple? And one of the attributes of that is, do you make each other look good? Do you help each other actually play to your superpowers and play to your strengths? And there's a really simple tool that we have been using for quite a while on that, and to help us figure out this question of like, are we working as a team? What could we be doing better in this category? Is we'll often just draw this chart, and maybe you've seen this before, but it's like the stuff that is most important and least important, top to bottom, and then stuff that drains our energy, like these red batteries, to stuff that gives us energy or is just like really in our zone of genius. And we just try and fill in these quadrants, and then we look at it together as a couple to figure out like, how can we support each other? How can we make sure that whatever is kind of the most high value ways that we can contribute to the world, to our family, to each other, just to life? How can we make sure that stuff that gives us energy, we encourage each other to live in that spot as often as possible?
If we can live in the places that give us the most energy and are the most important, then we'll look at both of ours and we'll realize there's a whole bunch of things that neither one of us likes to do, and it sucks our energy. Those are the first things that we'll look at. Okay, how can we enlist some support in this area? So an example of that around the holidays is, I don't like to cook. I just don't. It's not my thing. I even messed up for Thanksgiving. Total transparency. I got like the turkey that all you have to do is like heat it up. I still screwed that up. Like the turkey was totally not edible. It was so bad. Thank God the dog like ended up jumping up while we were gone and ate half of it, because
which is a whole different problem. But yeah,
it's a different problem. But at least somebody enjoyed it. Like, but I couldn't even warm up the turkey properly. Like that's kind of where I'm coming from. And so it was like, okay, how can like we enlist support in this area where, if we're looking at social media and stuff and like everybody else is like Betty Crocker and like doing all these things and making the cinnamon rolls from scratch, like I could feel like a total failure. And yet we're like, no, this isn't what is great for us. And so like, yeah, we'll go get it catered from a restaurant, or we'll figure out like, you know what, we don't even like turkey. Why don't we do steaks for Christmas, which is what we ended up doing. Like there's so many different.
We mean Carissa, who is just absolutely amazing.
Well, our oldest daughter is a killer cook, and she made the most perfect medium rare steaks. But it's like, okay, how can we find other ways to support these areas where it's like, we clearly don't enjoy them. They suck our energy. So why waste a whole lot of time there when we could be spending time in the things that we really.
And this year it was getting some extra help around cleaning, right? It was like,
yes,
like low, yes. I'll say low dollar or less important, or didn't feel like either of our unique genius, more draining right now. Sometimes cleaning isn't actually draining. There's something kind of nice about like working with your hands and feeling like I like going out and cleaning the garage from time to time, right? I don't love it all the time. And this was a time that it's like everybody's coming back into town and you're just like, I just want to get cleaners in here, and I want it to look great going into the holidays. That was a decision that we make together on things like that to help each other stay in our strength zone.
And quite frankly, like I remember that conversation that we had. I felt guilty, like wanting to have that help. I really did, because I'm like, I have the time to do it. I could do it, but I just knew like I wouldn't do it well. It would suck my energy. And like, I remember having that conversation and how freeing that was when you're like, yeah, let's just get somebody in here to come knock that out. That'd be
Yeah.
great. How good it felt to like walk into a clean house.
So just asking yourself the question, are we working as a team? Like, is this something that we're doing well right now or not? Certainly a helpful question for us over the years. And when we add it to this idea of like, are we putting couple first? And is the couple showing up with teamwork? Another question that sort of also relates to our personalities a little bit that way is this idea of, oh, that's okay. There we go. Is our energy finite or perpetual? So this comes from a behavioral assessment that when you take it, it actually helps you ascertain like, how do you view time? Now it's possible that you could take it as a couple and you're both the same. You're both finite or perpetual. We'll explain them in a second. You might find, like we did, that you tend to counterbalance, right? So Alice is finite, I'm perpetual. And when we go into the holidays and we think about how we view time, it impacts how we spend time on the holidays, right? This is especially true if you are self-employed, and the lines between business and home life are blurred. Maybe you work from home. So the idea of like, how do you shut off business? How do you shut off work for a season is a really important question for a finite person who views time as having kind of these, well, Alice, here, you explain finite. You'll do it more justice for sure.
Because I am definitely finite. So let's just take like work schedule. It's like I could, work all day Monday, all day Tuesday, but if somebody asks me to do something on Wednesday, that's super like elementary. But it's like, hey, would you, make a copy of this, or could you show me where to find that document, or could you just share that Google Doc with me? I totally will do it. And yet it will feel like I worked all day. There is nothing logical about this. Zero logic behind this, but it is about how energy is affected. And I think we get so hung up talking about how to manage our time, and we don't actually talk enough about how to manage our energy. And there's a great book on this that was written a while ago, Tony Schwartz, The Power of Full Engagement, where he talks about we need to stop talking about managing our time and we have to talk about how we manage our energy. And it's just a reality of how my energy works. It's like, if I log in and I go share that Google Doc, no big deal. And yet I feel like I worked the whole day. Like, I need to pay attention to that. It probably would be better for me to say, oh, let me, why don't you go ask so-and-so and they can share the doc with you and I'm out.
Yeah.
Like, not even log in.
Funny you mentioned this. So this year, Christmas and New Year's fall on a Wednesday. I haven't met anybody yet who likes this. I've heard like, 1-star reviews on Christmas falling on a Wednesday. It's like, do I take off after? Do I take off before? Like, when do you get actual time? And it's just hard when it falls in the middle of the week, especially for somebody where to feel rest, they really got to like block it out. There's like these finite blocks, right? So that's so Alice, thank you for being on a webinar here on the Friday in between Christmas and New Year's. This is a big deal. More so for you. I'm just going to go on a hike after this. This will be perfect. But thank you. And I will say, as the perpetual in the relationship, that simply means that that I don't get as hung up if we're at a Christmas party and or we're trying with a family and I've got to take a phone call that's work. What I've learned, especially if you work together, is whoever that bothers the least, try to get permission or really sort of hear from the other partner. It usually means me disappearing faster and saying, I've got to go take care of something. Let me step out, because in our case, I could answer a phone call. Alice hears 3 words. She knows exactly what's going on, right? It's like, oh, he's dealing with an appraisal issue. He's dealing with an agent that's doing this. I mean, right? You know how to complete it. And it just takes up bandwidth in your brain. And frankly, guys, even if you are watching this and you're like, oh no, we are totally both perpetual. If you have kids, I promise you your kids are finite, or treat them as if they are, and they want They want that sacred time. It's probably an area that I struggle with the most inside of our family, is creating that container that it's like, hey, phones off, business away. This is just family time. I'm certain all of our kids want more of it than we ever give them.
I think that is such an important point. The whole, like, when you started taking those phone calls, but like disappearing for the 5 minutes and then coming back, the family was so much better. We were all so much better for that. And I'm going to guess, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Like before, you were like, well, I'll take the phone call, and I'm still here, so that's good because we're still together. Yeah. But there wasn't this realization that we were being drained by being in the presence of the phone call.
Yeah. Yeah. And yet feeling the tension of like, and I want to give good customer service, and I want to be there for our clients. It's all the tension that any business owner feels. Here's another question that we've certainly asked each other over the years, and now we see how it shows up with our kids too, right? I mean, we ask this question just all as a family, but really, if you find yourself not feeling aligned during the holidays, oftentimes it's because, like, are we actually speaking each other's love languages? And of course, this is referencing a fantastic book. It's a classic by Gary Chapman, The 5 Love Languages. Alice, you want to walk through them? I don't know if people can see that well on the screen or not, but
yeah. So 5 love languages? Words of affirmation is one, and then acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch are the 5 love languages. And I think you can go online and take this assessment for free. There's even one for kids, I know, that is a really great one too. So if you've got little ones like, 10, 11 or under, you can do the kids version, and that's a really great resource.
Yeah, I think of the holidays as a time that each one of us wants to express and receive more love than average, right? I mean, it's sort of what marks the calendar. You have these different seasons, and this is a season of appreciation and love in whatever form that takes. What we have found as a family, what we've certainly found as a couple, is if we will get intentional about naming things, right? If we'll get really clear on expectations, might be a strong word. But I mean, I guess when you talk about conflict arises because of unmet expectations, it's like we've got these unspoken beliefs of like, well, if you really loved me, you would show it this way. It usually comes from our childhood, right? I mean, especially when we think about the holidays, and it's triggering memories when we were, when we were how old, right? For better or for worse. And we're kind of living those out now with our partners, and we're living those out with our kids. And anything you were going to say there?
So, I mean, I was just thinking, this was Christmas Eve. I was, as per usual on Christmas Eve, I'm still wrapping gifts. And you came in to check on me like, hey, how are you doing? Like, and I just looked at you and like, I need some water and I need dinner. Like, I'm acts of service. I'm like, you want to love me right now? Like, these are the things that I need. And you're like, got it. And you turned around and you made sure those things happened. But like, we would have
just wanted a hug and a kiss, everybody. I was like, so you're saying you don't want to give me a kiss right now? Okay.
Oh, saying these are the things I want and I need somebody else to do them for me. Because here I was wrapping all of these presents for everybody. And like, I was just like at my wit's end with the wrapping paper and the tape and the scissors and all the things. But I remember years where like, I wouldn't even be able to like tell you, like, that's how I needed to feel love in that moment. I'm like, I just need some water.
Yeah.
And you to receive that and say like, oh, got it. Like that, you don't have to understand it, but just to know like, yep, your acts of service, let me go get those things for you.
We found ourselves at a much better spot over the years. The faster we would identify this as a couple, and the faster we would also notice it in our kids. Like I look at this and I think Carissa has a lot of acts of service, love energy as well. Mm-hmm. So when she offers to cook a Christmas dinner, and everybody's like, oh, well, of course she would. She just loves to cook. And now we're missing it. We're missing the yes, she loves to cook. Yes, it's in like this zone of gives her energy. But to think for a minute that isn't also how she's trying to demonstrate and share love, would be to miss the opportunity. And we find that if we end the holidays and love didn't feel present, it's actually not because there weren't intentions. It's because we weren't able to notice or speak each other's love language along the way.
Yeah.
So,
and when I realized that for some of them, it was quality time. It was, offering them offering one of our daughters as a gift, like, hey, here's a $15 Starbucks gift card, and it can only be redeemed for you and me to go together to go play cards at Starbucks. Like, their eyes light up. It was like, really?
Yeah.
Because her love language was quality time. It's like, I just, to sit with mom and go play cards at Starbucks, especially when you've got multiple children, right? Like, that was a big deal. So to understand, it wasn't about money. It wasn't about like fancy things. It was like, no, that was the love language. It was time.
Yeah. The here's, speaking of love, I don't even know how to categorize this question, but I will tell you, it's a question that we've started asking more, and certainly it's one that we've started to think about more. I'll just say it this way: is compassion present for you as an individual? Is compassion present for your couple? Is compassion present for your family? And I asked one of our daughters, I asked Carissa this at an event yesterday. I think she'll be okay with me sharing. I said, when you come home, how old do you feel? And here's the spirit of that question. We all have these younger versions of ourselves with trauma attached and scars attached and some wounded memories along the way that we'll be doing something in present day. You did something today as a couple or as an individual. You did something today and you bumped into that. You bumped into that wound and somebody flinched, not because of something that happened today, or at least not only because of that, but because of sort of this remnant from the past. And when we've started to notice, like, how are we feeling, and actually, like, how old are we feeling right now? I can think of times that we've traveled to be near family, which by definition is like time travel, right? You're going to the place that you spent Christmas when you were 6 or 8 or 4 or 15 or whatever it is. And you actually, you regress, or you go backwards to this younger version of yourself. Sometimes that's nostalgic. Sometimes that's really, really traumatic.
I would just say, like, think back to the last time you visited your childhood home.
Yeah.
So if your parents are still alive, if you go back to the home, or if maybe you have a parent that comes and visits you, how old do you feel in those moments? I know. So I went and visited my mom maybe a month or so ago. And when I walk into that house where I grew up, I feel 12 years old.
Yeah.
And it's just I think, an awareness around that, because it's an important thing to notice. Like, because when we're feeling that way, like, that is not a good place for me from which I should be making any sort of decisions or life altering choices, because I'm not in a great place when I feel that way. So just, I think the awareness of it, it's like, yeah, I'm 47 years old, but when in certain situations, you know what? I feel 12.
Yeah. It's like, so if you ever feel like you're going through life with your partner and it's like, we're two adults, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, where did you go? The answer for both of us is regression, right? You went to this younger version of yourself, and it's okay. They'll come back. And we'll be able to come back more when, as a couple, we're aware of that, and we can hold space and hold awareness for that, for each other. We're doing it right now. I think it's really intentional for us right now, because we've got 2 kids that are out of the house ish. Well, one definitely, and one ish. And so they're in this in-between stage. It's like they're on this bridge from we're always at home to like, no, you're your own, you've grown up. And it's so easy. I was having a conversation with the girls last night of like, when your sisters come back, we all tend to treat each other at different ages, right? The older sisters come back and treat the younger siblings the way they remember them, right, as younger. And then and the younger siblings will in a way do the same, and it can come across as like, you don't respect me, you don't realize what I've how I'm different, we don't let each other grow. There's a lot that can be accomplished by feeling for ourselves, how old am I feeling, and being present for each other. And if you are truly going through the holidays and you are experiencing this bumpy lack of alignment, consider that it might be because one or both or everybody is not at their current age right now.
Yeah.
Alice, we're just this come from one of our favorite quotes about leadership, and we realize that it applies so much to couples. Like, everything improves when couples get more aligned, and we have seen that play out in our family. We've seen it play out in our business. It's like this makes such a difference. And well, let's just chime in on that if you want to. Otherwise, I want to go through like this series of questions, and we'll put together a PDF if people want it. We'll be happy to share it later. But these are some questions on different categories of alignment that couples can use to ask, maybe on date night, wherever it might be. Anything you want to say on just the benefits for a couple of getting aligned?
Well, I think we would all say as couples, like, we all just want to be more on the same page. And it's really easy with the busyness of life to just start to drift a little bit. And it's normal. It's entropy. It's just what happens. And so I think that the key is, how quickly can we get back to being on the same page again? And in every area, because like we looked at that wheel of life, there's like, we might be on the same page in the area of spiritual, but when it comes to finances, like during the holidays, we might be on totally different pages. Like, one of us thinks like we need to buy all the gifts, and one's like, no, let's get them 3 and that's enough. And so how do we just continually make it just routine, that we find ourselves, we put ourselves in a position to be able to get back on the same page? And I think that is best done through just a series of well-positioned, well-asked questions that we just get curious about one another enough to say like, hey, can we regroup here? And can I ask you a couple questions? Because I'm curious about where you are and how we can meet each other and how we can get back here on the same page together.
Yeah. So we put them into a few different categories. And the first one would be this idea of alignment questions. Alice, you've got a favorite one on here. You want to share that and what it means to you?
Yeah, well, I loved all of these ones. That's why I picked them all. So what would make this holiday season feel meaningful for you? So this goes back to the internal representation. Like, we all come from different childhoods, different ways of growing up, of what we think the holidays are about or what makes them special. And just even as the year goes on, even after 25 years of doing holidays together, Seth and I, it's like, what makes a holiday meaningful to me now is way different than it was 15 years ago. So continually asking that question of, what does it mean? Like, what would meaningful look like for you at the end of this, for us to get at the end of this 2-week period and to say like, we crushed that assignment, and like, this is super meaningful and super awesome. Like, here are the things that would need to happen. I think we'll find that it's actually like these little pieces that, if they were like, these expectations are met, makes for a meaningful holiday season. They're just unexpressed.
Yep, absolutely. And sometimes they're unexpressed because you don't actually think through them, right? You can turn this into, right now, these are questions to ask each other. A step before that might be sitting down with a journal and asking yourself, right? I like the fourth one down there.
First.
What's that?
These are great journaling questions first. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, I like the fourth one. What's one thing we can do differently this year to make the holidays less stressful? It's although obviously our definitions of rest are different, but there's nothing worse than ending the holidays feeling burnt out and just really crispy. And we look back and be like, how much of that stress could have been avoided? So expectation.
Usually most of it.
Yeah. Well, go ahead here, hon. Expectation setting questions.
Yeah. So so my favorite one on here would be, what's one thing I can do to help you feel supported during the holidays? Um, and that probably speaks, the reason I love that one probably speaks to my love languages. But asking one another, like, hey, how can I support you? Like, what would make you feel loved, supported during the holidays? And remember back to that story I shared about Christmas Eve. It was getting me a glass of water. Like, it was not big. It was not big. Like, Seth, the number of times you apologize for like not having a present, I'm like, I could care less about the gifts. I wanted a glass of water. Like, that wasn't a big deal. And I think that sometimes like that's hard to believe. Like no, I didn't want a gift. Like, here are the things that actually mattered. Like, come to an understanding around those things. But without these conversations and these questions, it doesn't actually happen.
Fun fact though, guys, I did give her a gift that between last in the past year.
Let me tell it from my perspective. So I knew that he hadn't gotten me a gift because he told me he hadn't. I'm like, that's totally fine. I have zero expectation of that. And then he handed me, like, Christmas hands me a gift, and I open it and I'm looking at it. I'm like, gosh, this looks oddly familiar. But I said, thank you. I'm like, oh, this is so nice. Thank you. And he's like, well, good. Well, if you don't open it, I'll give it to you again next year. Like I gave it to you last year.
That's all right. And the gift will be, we'll both get to go enjoy a cruise here in a little bit. So that does make up for it a little bit. But yeah, stressing on the love languages there, that's for sure.
But hold on. So like, I just remember years that if you had done that, I would have been angry. I do. Like, I remember, like, I would have been angry because I thought, like, you're supposed to get me a gift and I'm supposed to want a gift and we're supposed to like have it be a certain way. When I realized, like, I'm actually embracing minimalism right now. And like, I don't want stuff in my house. The best gift you can give me is like, take stuff out of my house right now. Like, please don't get me a thing. And when he did this year, I thought it was absolutely hysterical. I'm like, please keep it, give it to me again next year. Like, this will be awesome. But I remember years where I would have been angry about it for no good reason.
So connection questions. Here's one. What's one thing we can do together this season that would feel special to you? Even that same question. What's a holiday memory from your childhood that brings you joy? And how can we recreate the feeling? Recreating the feeling and the same activity aren't always, I mean, they're rarely necessary, right? It's like, what are the feelings that you want to recreate? And that's what we've spent more energy trying to find. And it's, I mean, I guess it wasn't for Christmas, but the year that you got this circular table in our house, I'm like, I know there was a feeling you were going for to look around the table at our family around this round table. And just the energy that created for you. Right. And it's been a magical place to celebrate dinners. Well, I wish I could say, well, I don't know. We don't do a lot of family dinners. Maybe wish we did more. We'll look back and regret that. But the ones that we do share are really magical that way. So anything else on connection questions?
No, there's so many good ones on here, but I would just go back to the whole, like, if you journal on these first and then have these conversations, I think these are powerful conversations. And then to these resilience questions. So if conflict arises, how can we remind each other that we're on the same team? Conflict's going to happen because you're going to have unmet expectations. So how do we have this agreement ahead of time of like, hey, when that conflict does happen, like, how can we get back on the same page? How can we remind each other that, like, not only are we same team, but we're first team?
Yeah, love that. Love that. And then legacy questions, right? I love this bottom one. If we could write a letter to ourselves about this holiday season, what would we want it to say, right? It's begin with the end in mind, right? Obviously, this John Maxwell idea. And sometimes we'll do this as we're sort of planning out these holidays. We'll go into the future. We'll say, when we look back on this holiday, what do we want to be able to say? What do we want the core memories to be? And it's really been an area that we've been able to focus on with our kids, with each other, and improve them year by year. And just doing that exercise on the front end is part of what keeps us aligned throughout the holidays, anyways. So there you go. Well, any last words, Alice, on the holidays that you want to share?
Just I'm going to go back to with what we started with, just around expectations. Expectations occur, conflict occurs when there are these unmet expectations. So if we could just work together, if you could work with your spouse around having understanding around what expectations are, and starting with yourself first, though, of like verbalizing them for yourselves, journaling about for yourself around what are my expectations. The number of times I will hear people say, well, he should just know. I can't believe you didn't know. Like, nobody's a mind reader. And a lot of times I don't even know. I don't even have clarity around what it is I want. How could I expect somebody else to know? So don't make people guess. Like, what are the expectations? Because if you're clear about your expectations, you're really guaranteed with these conversations to have a much, much more enjoyable holiday season.
Yeah. And I think I would just add to that, this idea of, we can look back on years that we went through the holidays and we were fine, and we were a couple. We both went through, we both survived, we compromised where we needed to. But I wouldn't say that we like co-created something great together. There were conversations on the front end, or conversations during the midst of it, that if we just taken a few minutes to get realigned through talking through some of these things, the impact that we could have as a couple together gets exponentially greater. And we think there is something special that couples are able to create when they're in that spot together. So we just encourage it. It's a journey. By the way, if you are an entrepreneurial couple, right, which for us means you balance business and life as partners, we want to connect more. Realigncouples.com at the bottom of that page there. Find us there. We would love to chat with you. We found ourselves engaging more and more in conversations with entrepreneurial couples that are navigating these worlds together. And we found like it can be really lonely. It can like, it's hard to know who to have conversations with when you find yourself in that space. And if that's you, we'd love to talk more. So if you want to reach us, here's some of our information. And Hun, you get the last word. Anything you want to say?
Well, if you know anybody that would benefit from even just this past hour, go share it with them. Go help somebody else that is going through it, because you know what? Everybody's going through it and very few people are willing to talk about it. So the more conversations I think we're able to have, I think the stronger marriages will be, the stronger families will be. And we're just honored to be on this journey with you. So thanks for joining us.
Take care, everybody. Happy holidays.